Coming up on today's episode, is WWE selling WrestleMania 36? Sasha Banks confirms she's injured, and the recent major WWE firings were supposedly over AEW.
Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe. Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk Stacked News. I am Chopper Pete Quinnell. WWE held an investors call yesterday for 2019 Q4, and with a continued decline in ratings, WWE not putting on so many live shows because they were losing the money, and the recent firings of George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, there certainly was an awful lot to dive into. But in fact, it's none of these things that we're going to be talking about first, because Vince McMahon is considering selling WrestleMania. What the dickens? This all came from one part of the investors call, where Vince McMahon laid out potential plans for a major shakeup of content on the WWE Network. One of the plans he spoke of was selling network content to other streaming services, which would increase revenue for WWE. Now, it's all well and good if Table for Three starts showing up on your local TV channel, but you'd expect the big stuff, the pay-per-views at least, to be secure and safe locked up on the WWE Network, right? Well, not exactly. After the investors call was over, Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live revealed that he received a text from someone within WWE that mentioned that they were considering selling WrestleMania to Fox so it could be broadcast on their network instead. So get ready for your WrestleMania main event to be laced with shrink screen ad breaks and to miss most of the action because Fox is coming to town. I wonder if their war room is celebrating like they did when they acquired the services of Roman Reigns. While this is just a rumor and not a confirmed plan as of right now, McMahon seemed very keen to get the ball rolling on any potential deals, stating, "We also have an option right now. There's no more better time to exercise the selling of our rights to all the majors, quite frankly. All the majors are really clamoring for our content, so that could be a significant increase, obviously, in terms of revenue." Vince would then go on to say that if they went into business with any of these major streaming platforms, that an announcement could be made before the end of the first quarter, which is in like a month. If the turnaround time is that quick, perhaps a deal is already being worked out. Now, does this mean that WWE are abandoning the network entirely? Well, ever since its launch in 2014, it's never quite reached the numbers that WWE were hoping for and expecting. And while it eventually picked up and has become a solid platform, with the ever-declining ratings numbers and public interest in wrestling waning, the network continues to be less and less profitable. There was talk of the WWE Network becoming a tiered system with different pay options, and they even did a soft launch of the tier system, though free for now, and on the investors call, it was mentioned that once more data becomes available about it, they would consider launching it completely onto the network. However, network subscribers have been dropping beyond the expected rate as well. At the end of Q3 in 2019, the WWE Network had 1.585 million paid subscribers, with that number expected to drop to 1.43 million in Q4. The actual number in Q4 was 1.419 million subscribers, which is the lowest that number has been since 2016. One other avenue of increased revenue McMahon mentioned on the call would be to introduce adverts onto the WWE Network as well. So get ready for your WrestleMania main event to be laced with shrink screen ad breaks and to miss most of the action. Again. Before we carry on with the news, a quick thank you to No One Names Their Kid This Anymore, Larry, for being an awesome pledge hammer on Patreon. One of the other major talking points going into the investors call was the recent firings of George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, the former WWE co-presidents. Interestingly enough, they were barely mentioned on the call, being simply a footnote on one of the slides of Vince's presentation. During the time where people could ask McMahon questions, however, he was asked about the departures of Barrios and Wilson in more detail, and how that would affect the company moving forwards. Vince responded with, "Well, I think this is for sure. In terms of changing or reimagining our culture, the way we do business, it's going to be far more inclusive, and quite frankly, that's in our strong management team currently as well. And going forward, we're attracting world-class individuals to our company. Who wouldn't want to work for WWE? I mean, come on, it's exciting." The politician's response, I see. Once again, though, Vince was asked about why Barrios and Wilson left the company, and if the decision was based on disagreements on strategy. A lot of it was execution relation. A lot of it was the focus as well as reallocation of resources. Again, looking at the way we do business, it's going to be different and more successful. Interestingly, there's been a more expansive insight into this particular comment by Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio. This particular disagreement on the focus of the company seemed to be one of the leading factors in their dismissal, and it potentially seems to have been about AEW. According to Meltzer's report, Barrios and Wilson's focus for the company was to try and allocate resources, or reel them in a little bit, to make the company as profitable as possible. You know, like a company tends to try and do. McMahon, on the other hand, wanted to invest in the wrestlers themselves and pay them loads extra so they wouldn't leave for the competition, namely AEW, but also New Japan and Ring of Honor, because they've got a talent war going on at the minute too. It's said that this disagreement was one of the leading factors in Barrios and Wilson's dismissal, and it appears to have been backed up by the actions of WWE as of late, offering crazy amounts of money for talent to stay in the company, including the Revival, who we already knew had turned down offers of $500,000 per year, but now, according to Booker T on his podcast, they turned down a new offer of $700,000 per year each. That is some bonkers level of money for a team they want to turn into a comedy act. But with alternative options springing up across the wrestling world, Vince's checkbook can't bank everyone, and it seems there are some wrestlers that are just determined to be on their way out, regardless of the money offered. We've already seen it happen with Jon Moxley, and now it seems to be happening with the Revival and other talent too. In general terms for WWE though, they recorded record highs for revenue, increasing from $930.2 million in 2018 to $960.4 million in 2019, with the new TV deals from Fox and USA being the prime reason for the revenue increase. Plus, you know, Saudi Arabia, that little chestnut. So despite everyone saying that WWE is going down the pan and Raw and SmackDown are bad shows and it's so boring and repetitive and uncreative, which is basically everything I say every week I review SmackDown, WWE are somehow making more and more money every year. I mean, credit where credit is due, I guess. All of this talk of competition and AEW has got me thinking, how did the ratings go this week for AEW and NXT? Well, in good news for both shows, they both saw an increase in ratings. However, AEW is still ahead once again. Dynamite managed to pull in an average of 928,000 viewers, an increase of about 100,000 viewers from this time last week, or NXT managed to draw 770,000 viewers, an increase of about 58,000. Overall, that's good news for Wednesday nights, and it'll be interesting to see the ratings for both shows in the coming weeks, with both brands putting on pay-per-views in the near future, with NXT TakeOver Portland next Sunday and AEW Revolution on February 29th. Phew, enough of the serious company talk and numbers and all that nonsense, let's talk about the usual stuff. Sasha Banks hasn't performed on WWE television in quite some time, with the reported reason for this absence being an ankle injury. The angle itself played out on SmackDown, with an unseen backstage brawl between Banks and Lacey Evans resulting in Banks picking up the ankle injury. Banks was even withdrawn from the Women's Royal Rumble in January as well. Well, Banks has seemingly confirmed the injury as legitimate, though in her own heelish, kayfabe way. Appearing on Corey Graves' After the Bell podcast, Banks spoke on her absence, saying, "If you guys watched Friday Night SmackDown a couple of weeks ago, the evil, unrole model, terrible mother Lacey Evans tripped me backstage and hurt my ankle. I can barely walk. It's terrible. I'm a person that always wants to be 125%. Right now, I'm just at 100%. So you guys have to wait. It's unacceptable. I'm taking my time so I can come back bigger and better than ever." This seems like a way of covering up her legitimate ankle injury and placing the blame on Evans in order to further the story. But it's also worth noting that on the same podcast, her WrestleMania goal this year was to wear the best outfit and to be on the pre-show, so her word may not exactly be trustworthy. Someone who may have slightly different goals, however, is Timothy Thatcher, who recently signed with WWE following an extensive and successful career on the indie scene. With Thatcher's links to Ring Camp, the former stable including Walter, which has essentially been rebuilt as Imperium in WWE, there were calls for Thatcher to join the company for a long time. However, I don't think people realize how long the offer for him to join was there for. According to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Thatcher impressed WWE backstage officials during WrestleMania 31 weekend back in 2015, and he has essentially had an open offer to join WWE since then. Thatcher had other goals in mind, but the offer was always there. Those goals in mind seem to have also been revealed, as the supposed reason why the 36-year-old chose now to sign with WWE was because that he wanted to sign with a major promotion in Japan, but that offer never came. Damn you, Gato! With Japan no longer an option, and the indie scene already conquered under Thatcher's awesome time wrestling there, WWE was the next step for the former ring camp talent, and now he might join Imperium in NXT UK, or maybe he'll just be awesome in NXT on his own, or on the main roster, or something else, I don't know, but he's really, really good. Now if you've somehow missed the news in the last couple of days that Adam Blompier is now part of the WrestleTalk team, well, there you go, I just gave you the news. He'll be doing monthly fantasy booking videos and weekly videos starting this Sunday. But what videos will they be? Well, listen in and check it out.
It's time to get hype, spot monkeys, because once again WrestleTalk has revolutionized the way we do our YouTube. After turning the content landscape on its head when we invented the bold and daring formats of news and reviews, WrestleTalk has changed the game yet again. So while other channels are still doing wrestling, we're also doing wrestling, but to the max! We've drafted in the hottest free agent in wrestling YouTube, Adam Blompier, to star in our list videos for the first time ever in his career this year. Are you ready, Adam?
It's actually quite a tight format.
We're the list's list slave. So get into that listing spirit with these 10 reasons to love lists. Number 10. They're a definitive index of subjective information ranked according to host's preference but treated as gospel. Numbers 9 through 1 also this, but more. Watch this space because WrestleTalk does list this Sunday and people are saying it'll be the death of all other content. It's the death of all other content. It's the death of content.
Vince McMahon wanted Chris Jericho back in WWE. Press the video to the right to find out more, and the video below that to find out more about Samoa Joe potentially being suspended. A special thank you to our pledge hammers on Patreon, some of whom you see scrolling below me right now. I've been Chopper Pete Quinnell, and that was wrestling.